Hi, this is Max for my persuasive speech for public speaking. Did you know that some bacteria are resistant to antibiotics? Could you imagine life if medicine itself just didn't work? According to Leanne Anderson on drugs.com on July 19th, 2023, there are multi drug resistant bacteria that cause about 35,000 deaths every year. Could you imagine if there was an even more deadly disease that ended up becoming resistant to bacteria? This is very frightening. I'm here today to tell you that we all need to take all of the medication we are prescribed and take it for as long as they tell us to. This is to prevent a quote superbug developing that could potentially wipe out the human race. It could look like one of those zombie apocalypse movies. In order to convince you of how big of a threat this may be, you first need to know what antibiotic resistance is. So, what exactly is antibiotic resistance, you may ask? Douglas Morier on Britannica.com on November 21st, 2024, says that antibiotic resistance is when bacteria itself that causes a disease are no longer killed by the antibodies in antibiotics. The first drug that they noticed a resistance on was penicillin back in around World War II, back in like the 1940s. The Cleveland Clinic on October 19th, 2023, said that the antibiotic resistance takes away treatment options, meaning if there were a superbug that was deadly and they ran out of treatments for it, it could end up being devastating. My grandma, who was a nurse, told me a story one time about someone who came into the hospital on three separate occasions for the exact same disease because each time he thought he was too good and he thought that he didn't need to take all of his medication. And it ended up coming back again and again. She didn't specify which disease it actually was, but if it were as simple as just taking all of your medicine, it seems like an easy choice to me. Now, the causes for antibiotic resistance are really simple. First and most obvious is the overuse of antibiotics. If you take a lot more antibiotics than you're supposed to, the bacteria may end up developing a resistance to it. The same goes for underusing antibiotics. If you barely expose the bacteria to the antibiotics, not all the bacteria may be killed, meaning that the bacteria that is left may end up having a resistance to it. According to Yella Hewings Martin on November 14th, 2017, on medicalnewstoday.com, figuring out how these bacteria spread once they're resistant can help us to come up with new antibiotics for these diseases. Antibiotic resistance is only one type of microbial resistance. Other things that can cause disease, like fungi, viruses, and even parasites, can also develop resistances to whatever drugs may help them for those particular things. Tuberculosis is a big disease that has ended up becoming resistant in some cases to the common antibiotics used to treat it. Luckily, there have been more antibiotics found to treat this. It would be bad news if we were unable to find any other antibiotics for it, as tuberculosis, especially back in the day, used to be very deadly. Depending on what type of tuberculosis you have, ends up determining a lot of things about the antibiotics you need. This can change the type of antibiotics you need. It can also change the amount you need, how long you take it for, how often you need to take it, and what side effects you should monitor for while you're taking it. I was able to find all of these facts about tuberculosis on CDC.com from May 6, 2024, in the article titled About Drug Resistant Tuberculosis Disease. Antibiotic resistance is inevitable, but if those bacteria are end up being killed before they can pass on the gene, then they can't pass on that resistance gene to other bacteria, meaning it can't spread. It's like a game of cat and mouse, where we hope the cat keeps catching the mouse over and over again before the mouse can get away. For your solutions, there isn't typically anything you can do to prevent it altogether. However, there are some things that you can do avoid to actually prevent antibiotic resistance. According to medlineplus.gov on September 27th, 2024, which just so happens to be my birthday, you should never use antibiotics for things like parasites or viruses as they just don't end up working, and it's just unnecessary use of antibiotics that can end up, having bacteria build up a resistance to it. Um, they say that you should also listen to your healthcare provider on what you truly need, and you shouldn't press for getting more and more antibiotics. When you take your antibiotics, make sure you take them exactly the way that you're supposed to. Lastly, practice good hygiene, such as washing your hands frequently and covering your mouth when coughing or sneezing. To sum up everything that has been stated, we need to be wary about how we take antibiotics. These simple fixes make it easy for you to do your part. Now, I know many of you may already follow these simple rules. However, even if I can only change a few people's perspectives on it and end up making that difference by them ended up taking all of their medication, then I've achieved my goals here today. I urge you to follow these guidelines, as even if it doesn't end up saving the world someday, it can end up saving millions of people from suffering further from not having antibiotics to take. Thank you.